Well, we're going to begin this morning with a little bit of show and tell. You may remember last year at this time, our denomination, the United Church of Christ, produced these yard signs. We had one out in front of our church, and it says, "This Christmas, we remember that Jesus was a refugee," and a quote from Matthew's Gospel. The front is in English. Well, one side is in English and one side is in Spanish. Jesus was a refugee. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, and they really don't want us to be talking about that in the weeks leading up to Christmas, because they want to focus on happier things. Now, I know we want to look at the nativity set, and we want to see a happy, pretty little scene like something out of a Disney movie. But you know, the world into which Jesus was born was not a happy one. Jesus was born into a world of injustice and oppression, violence and fear. So Jesus' mother was an outcast. She was a poor, dark-skinned teenager who found herself pregnant out of wedlock. She's the lowest level of someone in society. She's an outcast. And she and Joseph have to leave their hometown of Nazareth. They had to get on a donkey, and they had to travel 4 days to go to Bethlehem because Caesar Augustus had decreed a census. And after their 4-day journey, when they get to Bethlehem, no one will welcome them. There's no room for them, no refuge. The baby has to be born in an animal stable. And the baby Jesus' bed is a manger. That's the trough where animals eat their food. And just a few months after Jesus was born, when he was still an infant, Mary and Joseph had to flee with him into a foreign country. They were fleeing a terror campaign that was being waged by a power-hungry king, King Herod. Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus had to flee into Egypt, a foreign land where they were strangers, a land in which people spoke a different language from them and practiced a different religion from them. The Holy Family were refugees. Now, last year, many of our UCC churches not only displayed this sign, but some of them put nativity sets out in front of their church, but they had Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus in cages. And one of them had Mary and Joseph in one cage, and the little baby Jesus separated from them in his own little cage. Now, this is a very jarring image. It makes us uncomfortable. We don't want to focus on that on the weeks leading up to Christmas. But it is important for us to remember that Jesus was a refugee. Now, we hear today that Jesus came in the name of the Lord. That is what John the Baptist is proclaiming in today's gospel reading for the second Sunday of Advent, in which we focus on that second candle of peace. That is what the people of Jesus' day were expecting the Messiah to bring them. Peace. Peace meaning peace from an oppressive political regime. Peace from repressive religious authorities and laws. And peace from an unjust social structure which dictated which people were in and which people were out, which people were clean and which people were unclean. That was the way of the world in which Jesus lived. But Jesus came to usher in the way of the Lord. So what is the way of the Lord? Because that's what we're supposed to be doing these 4 weeks of Advent. We're supposed to be making way for the way of the Lord. So it'd be important for us to know what that is. The way of the Lord is the way of peace. The way of the Lord is the way of love. And the way of the Lord is the way of justice. So you know Jesus would famously say, "When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me." And the followers of Jesus said, "Jesus, when did we ever see you any of those ways?" And he said, "Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me." So that's the question, my friends, we have to ask ourselves during Advent. I love that you're putting up Christmas lights and you're baking cookies. That's wonderful. But the question is, what are you doing to make way for the Lord? What are you doing in these weeks leading up to Christmas for peace, love, and justice? Now, when I think back on the year of 2022 in the life of Douglas UCC, I am so moved and inspired by all of you and what you have done this year in the way of peace, love, and justice. So I see, for example, this year that this church raised more money for the hungry around the world and locally in the Crop Hunger Walk. We were the top 3 church in the entire United States. I see our collection boxes overflowing. Whenever we had a food drive this year or a clothing drive, our collections are overflowing. And when I think back on this year of 2022 in the history of our church, it's a very meaningful year because our little church, as you know, welcomed an Afghan refugee family who lived this year on our church campus. And when they had their baby this summer, I received a picture of the family holding the baby. And when I look at that picture, I think, that's what the Holy Family looked like, because they too were Middle Eastern refugees. Christmas, my friends, is about making way for the way of the Lord. So, when we feed the hungry, Christ is born. When we welcome the stranger, Christ is born. When we lift up the lowly, Christ is born. Now, today we are focusing on peace. And we know it's a famous slogan. There can be no peace without justice. No justice, no peace. But peace, my friends, isn't just the absence of war and conflict in the world. The Dalai Lama said, there will never be outer peace until people have inner peace. And I've told you before about one of my great spiritual teachers. She was a woman known as the Peace Pilgrim. And she said something similar. She said, world peace will never be stable unless we stabilize peace within us. Do you understand? Peace is an inside-out process. If you want peace in the world, well, have peace within yourself. I know a lot of wonderful people in this church and in this world who are doing great things for justice, but they're lacking peace within themselves. They're people who are so filled with worry and fear and anxiety and resentment. If you're filled with that, there's no room for the Prince of Peace to be born. Do you understand? There's no room at the inn. The inn is your innermost being. You don't have room for the Christ child to be born in you because it's filled with all of those other tenants. Would you please, in the weeks leading up to Christmas, evict those tenants? Okay. So that you can make room for the Prince of Peace to be born in you. Now, thankfully, we have been given the gift of prayer and meditation. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, find time each day to be still and know. You know there's a place within you. You know that. where all is calm and all is bright. It's within you. That's where you need to dwell this Christmas season. And so, my friends, in this season of Advent, let us continue to make way for the way of the Lord to be born in us. Let us give our consent as Mary did to become filled with the light so that we can give birth to it in the world. In this Advent season, let every heart prepare him room. Namaste. Hello, everybody. This is Sal Sapienza, and I'm so excited to share with all of you that I've written a brand new book. The book is called Childish Thinking: How the Church Keeps Us Stuck in Sunday School. Now, the title Childish Thinking comes from Christian scripture, where we hear that if we wish to grow in spiritual understanding, then we must let go of childish ways of thinking. And yet so many Christians today, even after years of Bible study and Sunday services, still have a very elementary understanding of their faith. They still understand God as some old man with a long gray beard. They think heaven is a place up in the clouds with pearly gates, that the devil is some red guy with horns and a pitchfork, and that hell is a fiery place below the earth. Those are things that we tell children. None of those descriptions appear anywhere in the Bible. And so in Childish Thinking, I try to dispel many of those misnomers, and I explore topics such as God, Jesus, heaven, hell, sin, prayer, and resurrection from the higher perspectives of ancient Christian mystics and contemporary progressive theologians. After each chapter, there are prayers for quiet contemplation and questions for personal reflection and journal writing. Come learn how you can let go of old ways of thinking and begin to see things with new eyes. Come and learn how you can finally graduate from Sunday school. The book is available now on Amazon, and you can read the entire introduction at childishthinking.faith.